the second place that I did in Romania was like Bucharest. How do you say
And I have in mind also the ladies and the gentlemen who are online. A very good morning to you all, wherever you might be. And I certainly hope that today is better than tomorrow, or than yesterday rather, and worse than tomorrow. Anyway, again, good morning. My name is Doru and I am a retired ambassador, and I am with the New Strategy Center. I have the great privilege to moderate the panel of this morning. And because we have a time limit, unfortunately, I invite you to jump directly into the topic. So on the 25th of February, 2022, one day after Russia attacked Ukraine, NATO Secretary General declared, and I quote, "We are facing a new normal in European security," unquote. Well, indeed, a new reality is taking shape as we speak. I think that we here in this room know how it should be, rather how it must needs look like, this new reality. As long as commitments to freedom and democracy and the rule of law and the unswerving respect of human rights are true. A major challenge in achieving an enduring new reality is in front of us, of course, in the security domain. Yesterday we heard very pertinent and relevant sentences on how threats to Europe shall be different than the threats to Ukraine. Hence the topic of our panel. You know, and I know that this topic is complex enough for a day-long discussion. So we have sliced it to several questions and issues that we shared with our distinguished panelists. And very briefly, they will talk about things like, or rather try to find answers to some questions like, is it possible to envisage a coalition of the willing scenario for Ukraine before actually becoming a member of NATO? Might one expect or imagine it realistic to speed up Ukraine's European and Euro-Atlantic integration by ways of exacting certain concessions from both Ukraine and the respective organizations? As the prospects of a mega-frozen conflict, now we know that there is no such thing as frozen conflict. They are not frozen ever. But let's call them frozen. These prospects loom around. We should perhaps talk about the security guarantees for the Republic of Moldova. It is one of the oldest, if not the first, frozen conflict in this part of the world. And last but not least, the post-war security architecture is definitely of interest to other global players. And China comes to mind in the first place. How would the interaction between this architecture and China look like? So, very simple questions, isn't it? But we have invited a panel of most excellent experts, and I'd like to welcome them this morning and be thankful for having accepted our invitations. I will recall the names. Details on their professional biographies and information are found on the online. So Mrs. Svitlana KOVALCHUK, Executive Director with Yalta European Strategy in Ukraine. Good morning. Mr. Basat ÖZTÜRK, Director General for International Security Affairs and Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Turkey. Director General, nice to see you. Mr. James CARAFANO, Vice President of the Kathryn and Shelby Cullom Davis Institute for International Studies with the Heritage Foundation. Welcome. And Mr. Markus Keim, Senior Fellow, Research Division with the German Institute for International and Security Affairs in Germany. Good morning. This is our team. We have also online Sir James Everard, a general retired, who is Honorary Chairman of the International Consultative Board of NSC. I've left him at last because he is online, and I do hope that he is indeed online. We shall revert. Yes. Good morning, Sir James.
Good
nice
morning.
to see you. All right, so let us start. After around 8 minutes, something like that, we'll have a Q&A session. And during that session, I strongly encourage everybody to come forth with ideas, comments, questions, and perhaps we'll have answers to that. So, let us start. Ms. KOVALCHUK, shoot.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, organizer, for inviting me to speak at this panel, and it's always a pleasure to be back to Romania and especially to share a stage with such esteemed speakers. Actually, I would like to start my remarks with a short video. Could you please switch it on?
Peace. A short word. Fundamental values. Ceaseless struggle. Starting a war, Russia has shattered countless lives. Yet we will never allow them to shatter our core values. Ukraine aspires to a just, comprehensive and enduring peace. President Zelensky has presented the Ukrainian peace formula globally. 10 points, 10 key directions based on the principles of the UN Charter and international law. Radiation and nuclear safety, food security, energy security, release of captives and deported persons, restoration of Ukraine's territorial integrity, withdrawal of Russian troops and cessation of hostilities, restoration of justice, environmental safety, prevention of escalation and aggression, confirmation of war ending. Each point of the formula is based on the principles of international law. Each one is supported by the relevant resolution of the UN General Assembly or the Security Council. The formula offers a toolkit to achieve peace in Ukraine, but also it could serve as a universal conflict resolution mechanism worldwide. The peace formula allows every country to demonstrate leadership and influence shaping of the international agenda. It operates on 3 levels, creating a platform for global collaboration. The first level involves ambassadors of participating countries. 7 thematic meetings have already been held in Kyiv, with over 70 countries participating. But the diplomatic community can work anywhere outside Ukraine. In that case, our embassies all over the world would serve as coordinators of expert and political support for the peace formula. The second level involves meetings of national security advisors. Key advisors of world leaders have begun shaping the agenda in Copenhagen, Denmark, and Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. The third level involves heads of states and governments. Ukraine is already working on the Founding Peace Summit. It will mark the beginning of 10 summits, each one dedicated to a specific point of the formula. The final stage will be the second Global Peace Summit, solidifying the end of the war and establishing the long-awaited just peace. Implementing the peace formula signifies the restoration of respect for international law and the UN Charter. It will bring enduring peace to Ukraine and the world.
Thank you. It's actually how we see the basis for the new global world order. And we really believe that peace can be achieved, and we all together with our allies are very hard working on it. But let's be back to the history, because the best lessons we can learn is the lessons from the history. In 1993, my country had around 5,000 nuclear weapons. It's the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world. And actually, we decided voluntarily to give up the military arsenal. Why? Because we strongly believe that Budapest Memorandum will give us guarantees, and we will never suffer from our decision. But again, as history shows, this decision was taken by mistake, because the Budapest Memorandum was only nice word and nothing more. And especially we get full understanding of this memorandum in 2014, when Russia started to occupy my country, Crimea and eastern part of the country. We learned hard lessons at that time. Then non-legally binding security assurance are worthless, and one should never trust Moscow's promises. The internal world order is absolutely irrelevant from Russia, and strength is all that matters. And unfortunately, driven by best ideas and the best thoughts, we lose our strength. We lose nuclear potential. And now we are at this fight with Russia. And during the last 2 years, we are suffering. My country lost already 18% of territories, which still is under occupation. Each single day, we are losing our life. And of course, we have a lot of cities, ruined cities in our countries. And we cannot foresee, very often I hear a lot of questions. How do you see victory? Of course, our understanding of victory is being back to the territory of 1991. And we strongly believe that we can reach it. When it will be feasible, we don't know. And of course, we understand that we can secure it only by being member of NATO, because only being member of military alliance, it means that you can secure your defense. When it happens, we don't know, because we understand that our path to NATO is very complicated and long, especially being having partial part of territories under occupation. But what we understand absolutely that peace, that we need meaningful peace, and only meaningful peace can be lasting peace. Otherwise, we again should think about our lessons from 1991. So. This year, our President Zelensky came with suggestion that security guarantees from each country could be good solutions on our path to fully member states. And already in July, in Vilnius, G7's country decided to start work on it, and they declared that they support a joint declaration for security guarantees of Ukraine. What does it mean for us? It means for us that we will get security guarantees from different countries all over the world, including United Nations, and we will negotiate security agreements bilaterally with each country. These security agreements should be absolutely legally binding. It means that each country has its obligation towards Ukraine, and Ukraine's vice versa has obligation to each single country. And these security agreements include, first of all, providing the armed forces with all the necessary military equipment, of course, to counter current aggression of Russian Federation. This is provision of air defense system, artillery, armored vehicles and combat aviation and cooperation with NATO partners. Of course, it includes also training for Ukrainian armed force. Second part of such agreements are strengthening Ukraine's economy, because everyone understands if Ukraine collapses, it will cause big damages for the whole world, actually. And strengthening Ukraine's economy is foreseen through the reconstruction and recovery efforts. And of course, what is absolutely important for us to have a justice. It means that all Russian war crimes which was done in Ukraine should be prosecuted and they should be considered at the court. So, in addition to it, all Russian assets held in bank accounts to the other countries will be frozen until Moscow pays reparation to Kiev. Of course, it's, when we speak about agreements, they are obligatory, both binding, and Ukraine has also its own obligation. And according to these agreements, Ukraine undertakes to contribute to the security of its partners, continue to implement reforms that emphasize commitment to democracy, rule of law, respect of human rights, and freedom of the media, as well as put its economy on a sustainable path of development. Part of the security guarantees agreement are also defense reform and modernization of our army. As for now, I should say that more than 30 countries joined this declaration for support Ukraine, and as for now we have a negotiation with G7 countries who actually initiated this idea, and also with the United States of America. And we strongly believe that this idea of having these bilateral security agreements will guarantee us security in the nearest future, till the time when we get full NATO membership. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, all right, thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. KOVALCHUK. We'll go on to Director ÖZTÜRK. So, share with us your thoughts on this rather complex matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. In fact, as I see the beautiful Sinaia, the beautiful environment last night, I think we had a long night and hard consultations, so some of us may not be able to wake up early. But in any case, I'm going to address this panel from my heart and mind, as I have not prepared a text or anything. But what I want to say, first of all, is that I feel here like home, because this is our region. I would like to put it in a regional perspective. It's like in a village or in a town, in a district, we, the family of nations, live together. If there is a fire in the next building, who is going to be affected most? The neighbors. It's not a coincidence that Romania is and has been so active in addressing the conflict in Ukraine because of Moldova, but because of its border with Ukraine. Romania clearly feels that what is happening in Ukraine is affecting its own environment. It's the same for us, Turkey. We are a neighbor of Ukraine from the Black Sea. But the relations also between Turkey and Ukraine have been for centuries developing. We are, in fact, members of the same family of nations. Yes, we have 193 UN member countries in all around the world. there is one earth and we are all one in that sense, one family of nations. But whether they are united or not is open for debate. Why I say so? For example, what is happening in Ukraine is affecting us and we feel it every day, every night. We think about it. We have relatives, we have relations, we are so close to each other. So what is happening in Ukraine and what is not happening in Ukraine will affect us all. But I have to be honest and sincere with you. I don't think 193 countries in the world think the same way. So I should call for realism. What has not been achieved with the Budapest Memorandum could not be achieved with another series of documents where countries far away commit, quote unquote, to Ukraine security guarantees. Ultimately, what does it mean, security guarantees? Yes, being a member of NATO is a security guarantee. But the security assurances to be given by countries far away from Ukraine will not be credible, in my opinion. Turkey has not signed up to this declaration of G7. Yes, G7 is important. It's a group of the most powerful countries, economically, politically, militarily. Yes, it's true. They can help you by funding Ukraine, by delivering the needs Ukraine is asking from the international community. But I don't think none of them will come to help you in a battle. Because you have friends, we all have friends. Everybody is good to each other under normal times. We may think we have so many friends all around the world. Feel happy. In difficult times, you see the number of friends are decreasing. In the worst case, you see only few of them. Who are they? Usually, historically, naturally, they are your closest neighbors, closest members of your family. We are one of them. So it can never be construed as Turkey not giving security assurances of the G7 to Ukraine may mean we are not interested in the security of Ukraine. We are interested so much about the future stability, security, safety, resilience, strength of Ukraine, of course. So my intervention today is not coming out of mind only, but it's also coming out of my heart as well. And I'm not repeating the talking points of the Turkish Republic or anything. I was at NATO when this war broke out on 24th of February 22 as the Turkish permanent representative to NATO. So I had witnessed not that day, but also the previous events which led to this occupation. And in fact, this was not coming as a surprise to professionals. This was not coming as a surprise to professionals. I have to underline it once again. What happened in 2014 in Crimea? The inability to react to that timely, in the right manner. But it's not all about Crimea. It's not also all about 2008 Georgia-Russia conflict. But what happened in Syria? What happened in the rest of the world are important. And when I talk about Syria, the southern borders of Turkey, as Turkey has been the most critical ally of NATO for more than 72 years, defending the southeastern flank of this alliance, keeping it safe and secure. How we are doing this? We are doing it alone. Where are the others when chemical weapons had been used in Syria? The so-called red lines of a major ally became pink and disappeared. Is there a relationship between what had happened or what had not happened in Syria and what then we had faced in Crimea, elsewhere? It may be the case. So it has attracted my attention, for example, here, that we care about Ukraine because it's our neighbor from the Black Sea. But we also care about Syria, Iraq. What is happening in Gaza? I have not heard a word so far about this case. So there is another fire there, and it's to our next building. Turkey is, thank God, is huge, powerful country in the sense of a regional context, of course. We are not huge like China or United States or Russia in the global context, but in a regional context, we are a powerful country. Thank God, we can defend our borders. We can defend our rights. We can defend our country, not relying on anything, even including NATO. It is important to be a member of NATO, but ultimately, all of us will have to know that. Even in the context of NATO, Washington Treaty, allies are expected to defend themselves first. If we cannot defend ourselves, if we don't have this kind of resilience, which is Article 3 of Washington Treaty, but which requires continuous and permanent solidarity and cooperation, which is not happening, unfortunately. Even as if we speak today, we have a war in the north of Turkey. We have another war in Gaza. 2 fires. And some allies can still implement sanctions on Turkey, a major ally. It's a shame on them. That's all I have to say. So, in this context, I suggest to form a group of regional countries genuinely caring about Ukraine, genuinely ready to support you for your reconstruction, for your defense, for your future. I suggest today, and I'm going to make policy here, and I'm going to go back to Turkey and will suggest this to our minister and to the ministry, that we should form a group of regional countries, friends of Ukraine, the ones who really care about Ukraine. That's going to be your best security assurance and guarantee for the rest of our lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director ÖZTÜRK. A very interesting suggestion you made. Just the briefest of comments. I think that if you call it Friends of Ukraine, you'll definitely have more friends than countries are in the region. But this is something that perhaps we'll come back to later. Meanwhile, we go on to Mr. James CARAFANO from the Heritage Foundation. You mentioned something, Director General, about friends closer and others being very far. Well, the Heritage Foundation is both close and far, geographically speaking. Mr. CARAFANO.
Well, first of all, I think the topic of here, the reconstruction of Ukraine, is one of the most important and pivotal issues in the world today that we face if we want a world of a future of peace and prosperity. It is a vital issue, and it's vital to get it right. Having said that, hate the panel, hate the topic. I think security guarantees are kind of geopolitical fairy dust. There are no guarantees, and indeed many of the things that are being discussed as guarantees really aren't. They're commitments, they're agreements that might be helpful, but they're not a guarantee of Ukraine's future security. The only thing in the near term that is going to provide security to Ukraine is Ukraine's capacity for conventional self-defense and the ability to rebuild its population and its economy. That is going to deter Russia and really nothing else. And I think the question really is, what can we do to assist that? And we should be assisting that, and that is the crucial question. I think the most critical things, particularly in the area of conventional self-defense, is rebuilding an incredibly robust Ukrainian defense industry. That is something not only important to Ukraine, it's not only something that becomes a long-term deterrent factor to Russia, but I think in the end, a robust Ukraine defense industry will be another arsenal democracy and actually critical in the rebuilding and rearming of Western Europe. That is a project we should all care about and we should also be investing in. Air defense is absolutely crucial because you cannot defend your population, you can't bring people back, and you can't rebuild. And in the end, we have to invest and create an environment so people can return to Ukraine and rebuild the country and the economy. I think we have to be honest about the conditions under which that is going to occur. We have incredible debates all over the world. We have beautiful, wonderful debates in the United States. We have people that want immediate ceasefires. We have people that want the Martians to come down and solve this. But I think the reality is there is no debate that the logic, the strategic logic of where this is headed is pretty obvious. This is going to be some form of frozen conflict that may not even end in some kind of agreement or declaration. There's going to be territory that is owned by Ukraine, and there's going to be territory that is going to continue to be occupied in Russia. And the question is how can we ensure that the free and independent Ukraine not only remains that, but remains strong and vibrant? And here's the one thing I want to add in my comments, which is, because I don't think Ukraine's going to get into NATO near term. I think we have to be realistic about that. I don't think they're going to join the European Union in near term. We have to be realistic about that. But Ukraine is critical because its real security in the long term is going to come from geography. And that is the geography that unites countries together, that takes oxygen and space away from aggressors. And I think part of what we have to do to market the idea of why Ukraine is important to us to invest in is not just about Ukraine, not just about the short-term deterrence of Russia, but the opportunity to really transform the Eurasian space into something that works better for all of us. You've heard the term 3 Cs initiative. I mean, the initiative itself may not survive as an initiative, but the brand and the strategic vision and the concept are crucially important. The idea that the future of Europe really depends on building the infrastructure and the connectivity of North, Central, and Southern Europe into a new, vibrant economic community. That is an important and critical vision. It's important for the future of Europe, and Ukraine should be a central component of that. So as the 3 Cs develop, building that infrastructure in Ukraine should be seen as an essential part of that project, not only to bring Ukraine into the family of Europe, but also to make that project whole and viable. And I think our vision needs to be even broader than that, because that takes us to the Black Sea, and then the Black Sea is the connecting point for really bringing the rest of Eurasia together, and in particularly, and most important, linking Central Asia and the Caucasus to Europe and the West. You know, we often talk about the middle corridor, and it was kind of talked about as another way for China to engage with the West, and I think we've gone far beyond that. It's really about connecting Central Asia and the Caucasus to the greater free world. And I think this is something that hasn't really existed since the beginning of the 20th century, where we kind of destroyed the traditional way that Eurasia was connected. And what we have an opportunity here, because what we've really seen is kind of the collapse of the post-Soviet state, is for countries, for maybe the first time in generations, be able to decide their future and their friends and who they do business with for themselves. So if you build out the middle corridor and you build out the 3 Cs initiative, you basically are reuniting the traditional networks of Europe, and you're creating a vast new transformation in the future. Ukraine is smack in the middle of all those projects. And I think the way we market the future of Ukraine is under this broader vision of the transformation of Eurasia and a transformation of new opportunities, so we can get beyond kind of the myopic discussions about, whose sphere are you in the red sphere, the blue, what does it matter? Because instead what we need is to unite these countries so they can do business with each other, connect with each other, work with each other, and provide a belt of security and stability that in the end will be maybe Europe's best guarantor of another generation of peace. And so while I'm all for the reconstruction of Ukraine, and I'm all for making, not security guarantees, because that's not going to work, but the commitments that allow Ukraine to be free and independent and defend itself, because that works in the short term, we have to do a much better job at marketing, because it's not just about Ukraine. It's about the ability to build into a larger transformational project that I think will in the end be one of the most significant things we can accomplish in the 21st century. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed. That's it. Sorry? All right, we'll have a dialogue now. Mrs. KOVALCHUK, sure.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I want to react on remarks of my co-speakers. So I want to assure that Ukraine is defending ourselves. Yeah, Ukrainians are people who are dying at the front line. Yeah, Ukrainian families are who are suffering. Ukrainian women, children are who are refugees abroad. And it's not our wills to be abroad. Yeah, and we Ukrainians who are in Ukraine, we also all the time are under a big risk, because when I fall asleep, I don't know if rocket will fall in my house in Kiev or no. Yeah, we all Ukrainian and nation are fighting each single day on the front line, at our homes, at our business, at our companies. Yeah, we have a lot of friends, and we are really very grateful for Bayraktar, grateful for all supports we are getting from all countries over the world. And we, of course, believe in our country, but we strongly believe without security guarantees, we cannot assure our development, and we cannot assure our win. How we can think about 3C initiative, about infrastructure project without being secure countries? Yes, we have, like last year, a lot of energy infrastructure was destroyed, and it was we are expecting today. Now winter, we also expecting that our energy infrastructure will be destroyed, and it will be not only Ukraine who will suffer who is suffering from destroyed energy infrastructure, but our neighbors also are suffering from destroyed energy infrastructure. What happened 2 days ago, actually, on my way to Romania? Our biggest mobile operator was hacked by Russian. What does it mean? It means that all our dates were hacked, and again, all our infrastructure was damaged. And how we can speak about development, how we can speak about a big project, great project, regional, anti-regional, about being said. First, our priority is we need to have security guarantees, we need to secure our development, and then we can speak about 3C initiative, about a lot of regional initiative. We understand that best support we can get from our neighbors. It's historically so. But our problem is so big that we believe that we need support from all over the world. And 3C initiative is really a very good initiative. But my big question is it successful as for now? It's like initiative for the last how many years? 10 years, I believe, or maybe less. But do you believe that tomorrow it will become more successful as it was yesterday?
Yeah, can I just respond super quickly? I'll be very quick, right? First of all, I absolutely agree with you that Ukraine survives as a free and independent nation because the people of Ukraine are fighting for their country, and they will always do that. And so that actually is my great optimism while I believe this project could work, because there will always be a free and independent Ukraine, because Ukrainians will never relinquish their country. So I think we agree on that. I've been to Kyiv several times. I've seen the sacrifice and the tragedy, but I've also seen the incredible courage of the people. So I actually think we're building on a strong foundation, which is the Ukrainian people will never, never quit. So, but I just completely disagree with you that in the near term, what's going to stop Russia is security guarantees, because one, they're not coming, and two, Russia wouldn't care. The only thing that's going to ensure in the near term a free and independent Ukraine is if Ukraine consistently demonstrates the capacity to defend itself and demonstrates the capacity, even in wartime, to rebuild its economy. Now, I think we all can help on that, and I think we all should agree to help on that. But what I'm saying is we have to do a better job of making the case on why that's important. And it's not just important for the future of Ukraine. You are right in the middle of many countries that have to live next to Russia. And nobody wants to be a suburb of Moscow. And the question is how do we make sure that that is true, and that is if those countries can defend themselves, if their economies prosper, and if they can live with their neighbors. And if we wait for the war to stop to do that, we will wait for the rest of our lives.
All right, thank you very much. I think that we may have, as I said at the beginning of our meeting, we'll actually need a day-long debate on this very topic. So I think we have a choice to make. And that choice actually has only one option, which is to go on and move to Sir James Everard, because he's been online from London, former DSACEUR, and he would definitely tell us more things that we can also argue on later. And we keep in mind what you have said, all of you, so far. Sir James, if you please, join us, perhaps picking up some of the ideas here or any other ideas. You are most welcome, sir.
Ambassador, thank you. As 2023 draws to a close, I just very quickly want to put Ukraine in context. I mean, we have the Middle East in crisis, and that's going to get worse before it gets better. The Sahel is the most conflict-ridden region in the world, and that's going to get worse given escalation disorder and famine. I think the terrorist threat in Europe is acute. North Korea is unpredictable. I think the Russia, China, Iran trinity spell trouble. You know, we have Chinese aggression towards Taiwan and provocation in the South China Seas. That's increasing. I think the Iranian axis of resistance is growing stronger. And of course, the Russian war in Ukraine goes on, but appears deadlocked with both sides incapable of decisive victory outcomes. Debt is too high in most countries, and that's a restraint on action. NATO has, I think, excellent plans, but it's going to take some time to build the military muscle needed to fully implement them. And then 2024 is a year when more than half the people on the planet will take part in some form of nationwide or presidential elections, including Taiwan on the 13th of January. You know, and people talk about that being through Chinese eyes, an election that decides war or peace. We have the Moldovan elections in the autumn, and I think Moldova's unfinished business for Putin, and we need to ensure we support them. And of course, we have on 5 November the US presidential election. I think that hangs over us all. You know, rightly or wrongly, people either see the possibility of a Donald Trump presidency as a harbinger of doom, or here's a man with creative and original thinking who might solve our problems. I think my point being there's just a huge number of problems out there that are outpacing our ability to resolve them, and some of them may, if we're not careful, spin out of control. And I think it really is a time for statecraft for our leaders. And so that brings us to Ukraine, and I think I fully agree with everything that Director ÖZTÜRK and James has said. I think they're absolutely asking the right question. You know, what is a secure guarantee? You know, what does it mean? And I agree, if it's the implicit or explicit promise to protect Ukraine by some form of intervention, that's not going to happen. You know, is it something else? Yes, it is something else. And I thought it was interesting after the G7 commitment to deliver security guarantees. When you look at what nations are talking about, it is something else. It's about ensuring sustainable Ukrainian forces capable of defending Ukraine and deterring Russian aggression in the region. You know, that requires continued provision of security assistance, modern military equipment, as we've been doing, but more is required. It's about intelligence sharing, cooperation, training, support to the Ukrainian defence industrial base, perhaps not just in Ukraine, but in neighbouring countries. It's about strengthening Ukraine economically, etc., etc. So I think that's where our focus should be. And of course, the question talked about post-conflict. And I think post-conflict, as and when this conflict has been brought to a close on terms that we are happy with, I think that's an easier challenge. You know, if someone wanted intervention, a security guarantee in some shape or form, then, you know, there are lots of options, including, as we've heard, you know, some form of coalition of the willing. And you hear people talk about the Kyiv Compact, the expanded JEF, or indeed the regional friends of Ukraine. So I don't worry about post-conflict. I worry about now and ensuring that we deliver to Ukraine the support it requires. And I do think, you know, reconstruction of Ukraine is important. Yes, it is. Of course it is. Planning for it is important. Yes, of course it is. But we need to bring this war to a conclusion on terms that we're happy with. That's difficult, not impossible. It's just a question of political will. Yes, we need to bring Ukraine into NATO and the EU. That is difficult, but not impossible. That's a question of political will. But for now, it's about giving Ukraine the support they need to win this fight on terms they're happy with. And I hear two things very quickly. I hear that, you know, we're losing this war and it's immoral to ask Ukraine to fight a war that they cannot win. I don't get the sense from Ukraine that they believe that. I think this is Ukraine's choice, and they've asked for our support, and we give it to them. And I hear that the West are tiring of providing support to Ukraine. Again, I don't necessarily think that's true. I think there's a media narrative here that we have to overcome. And we must remind ourselves that NATO is more powerful than Russia. Its combined GDP dwarfs Russian GDP. You know, we have in the long run more manpower. And if we are determined that Ukraine win, then Ukraine win. And we just need to hold the ring. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you indeed. I think at least one of the issues that you raised, Sir James, is quite crucial to be a very down-to-earth approach. I mean, what do security guarantees mean? How you act on them, how they actually move, because as Mr. KOVALCHUK said, as we speak, there are bombs falling in Ukraine. There are people dying in the trenches, and so on and so forth. It's not theory, that's happening. And on the other hand, there are things that need to be done now. And sometimes you don't know which one is the first, the chicken and the egg. Is it rebuilding? Is it security? Is it weapons? And then we'll see, and so on and so forth. But let me not turn into a panelist. And I will thank you very much again, Sir James. Don't go away. Perhaps we'll be back to you.
I'll just add, I think, you know, that point about language is so important. It's so important because, you know, the G7 promised security guarantees, and yet I haven't seen any. And it's because we used the wrong word. Thank you.
There you go. That's another, you know, almost a parting shot. Now here we go to our last but definitely not least guest, Mr. Markus Keim. You are most welcome to continue or perhaps open up another chapter.
Good morning. Thank you to the New Strategy Center for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to return to Romania. As many things have been said, I think I can be quite short. I think the natural starting point when we talk about how to provide security or how to guarantee the security of Ukraine is the NATO summit of last July. And I think there are good reasons to consider the glass half full, and there are quite good reasons to consider the glass half empty. I think the political signals which have been sent by the NATO summit can be considered quite positive. Nobody's talking about anymore about Ukraine being a buffer state. Nobody's requesting from Ukraine becoming a neutral state. That's quite positive. And there's a clear commitment Ukraine will become a NATO member state after the war. I'm coming back to this point because this should be considered critical as well. So the overarching signal of NATO, I would add the European Union as well, is you're not part of the post-Soviet empire anymore, you're part of the West. And that shouldn't be underestimated. On the other hand, I think there's reason to consider the glass half empty. The first point is, what does it mean after the war? Do we expect a formal peace treaty? Is there some kind of formal ceasefire? Or is this formula somehow encouraging President Putin to extend the war? So that's one of the reasons to be more skeptical. And I fully agree, you stole my point. It's not about security guarantees. A guarantee would work like if, then. And that's not the case here. So I think the German government is quite particularly using the word security assurances or security promises, but nobody's using the word security guarantees anymore for understandable reasons. But overall, the signals are quite clear. Ukraine will become NATO member one day. So for the time being, and to be open, I've been disappointed with the results of the NATO summit as well. I've hoped for at least a membership action plan, a clear time frame, a clear timeline for NATO membership of Ukraine, but that has not been in the cards, given the majority of NATO member states being afraid to be drawn into an extended conflict with Russia. Second point, so for the time being we have to live with the G7 letter promising security assurances, which rests on three pillars. First, security assistance, delivering weapons to Ukraine. Second, that was your point as well, support for the Ukrainian defense industrial base. And to give you an example, Rheinmetall, one of the biggest German defense companies, currently partnering with a Ukrainian company, the name I forgot to be honest, partnering to develop joint capabilities to produce artillery shells. That's one of the examples, and I think there will be several examples to be developed in the foreseeable future. French, British, US companies partnering with Ukrainian companies, producing maybe in Ukraine, producing maybe outside Ukraine. That might differ from case to case. I think these are good examples. And the third pillar is training and exercises, and which is sometimes overlooked. To give you another example, several Ukrainian soldiers are currently trained in Germany. Several hundred soldiers are currently trained, being prepared for the fight in Ukraine, which is sometimes overlooked, which is, in my view, under the horizon. I've never seen them in Germany. However, I'm told that the German soldiers, the German generals are quite impressed. They're quite impressed by the courage, the determination, the knowledge, and the key point they always emphasize, the adaptability, how they adapt to the changed weapon systems, to the changed environment, quite quick. However, I think for the time being, and this is maybe the sober conclusion we have to draw, Ukraine has to take care for itself. I think this is not what security guarantees mean and security assurances should mean, and nobody's saying it publicly, but for the time being, Ukraine has to take care of itself. Which brings me to my third point. And here again, a little bit more skeptical. My question would be, how reliable are these security assurances or promises? Because as we all see, there's some kind of war fatigue, not only in the United States, but in European countries as well. And I could imagine a change of government in Berlin, in Paris, in Rome, and in a handful of other European countries, which might change the aspirational level of these endeavors, which I just mentioned before. Meaning, I wouldn't bet on a German government in 2028, 2030, to stick with the commitments which have given, or to stick with the promises which have been given to your country in the recent months and years. So that's an open question. And that leads me to my last point. What if the war continues? What if European countries fail to fulfill the security assurances to Ukraine? If I would be the presidential advisor to the Ukrainian president, one idea would come to my mind. If we are more or less alone, if the G7 does not fulfill its promises, one logical conclusion would be, from a Ukrainian point of view, nuclear weapons. So after the disillusionment of the Budapest Memorandum you mentioned at the beginning, I think that would be a more or less logical conclusion to deter Russia forever. And this is not in the European interest. That is definitely not in the US interest in terms of non-proliferation, but this is an option which should at least be considered in the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Somehow, Mr. Keim sort of closed the circle. I remember Mrs. KOVALCHUK was talking at the very beginning about the international law, and Mr. Keim wrapped it up with a question on how long commitments are to be, might be observed, and he mentioned war fatigue. Well, take a step back, look at it. The bigger picture is the international law, and I think we may agree that the international law has suffered a huge attack. It was almost trampled, it was not almost, it was trampled to the ground. Nobody cared on behalf of the aggressors. On the other hand, another word has become quite familiar, and that is lawfare. So we have cyberfare, we have warfare, we have lawfare, which puts or pushes the whole issue to a very new domains. Ladies and gentlemen, I stop here, and the open season, we declare open season to hunting and questions and answers. Who wants to be the first to go on this? Yes. Would you be so kind and introduce yourselves? You have the microphones in the back, and we are all ears. Sir.
No, thanks. My name is Kosh from Atlantic Council. You know, I like the reality dose that my colleagues, particularly my good friend Jim and the other colleagues up there, but I'd like them to push back a little bit on the cause of Ukraine. I think just 2 years ago, all the leaders represented up on that table said this was where the future of the international rules-based order is going to be, that this is why this is the most important cause in our lifetime. And you hear that no speech, either in Washington, D.C., or Brussels, or Germany, or anywhere else, that the whole cause of the world, as we know, is on the battlefields of Ukraine. That's what we said. And we failed to carry the rest of the world on it. Most of Africa, most of sort of so-called global South didn't buy it. So from that in 2 years to hear this, I don't disagree with the realism, other than the extraordinary proposition of nuclear. I couldn't think of anything more harmful to Ukraine, but that's a different element. From that, we are now where we are saying, I think we're kind of looking at literally more sort of transactional, situational issues that we need to worry about, and Ukraine need to carry this burden. So either this is an issue where the international rules-based order, as we knew, is on charge, and if that is the case, then what's the effort? I mean, it's nice to hear from our Turkish colleague who says we are like a little village. I mean, how would the reaction be if Russia had half of Turkey over? I mean, and other people said, hey, we're just a village. Let's just get around and, hold hands and we'll work it out. So I think it'd be useful. I don't disagree on the realism, but it'd be useful to sort of balance our own rhetoric and our interest and see how we go forward, making Ukraine, the bastion of rules-based order, at least on the fundamental fault lines as we have talked about it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So that was a comment. I think we may take it, and we should take it on board and think about that. Is there any specific question behind? Yes, our friend there in the back.
Good afternoon, Artem Wojtechin, Embassy of Ukraine. And a very short question is, there are $320 billion of Russian national funds in the European banks and other banks as well. And speaking about like the just punishment and the reconstruction of Ukraine, is there any option so these money, all of them, not just the percentage of the revenues, could be allocated and given to Ukraine for reconstruction purposes? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, here we have a very concrete question. Anybody would like to answer to that? Mr. Carafano? Shoot.
I would spend every second of, I'd spend it all yesterday. I do think that getting money back into Ukraine for building up the defense infrastructure and the self-defense capability and reconstruction right now is really, really important. And I think that those funds, if they could be unleashed, because the problem is every country has a different set of rules, obviously. But where nations can unlock that money and funnel it to Ukraine, I think that is incredibly important. And again, one of the reasons why I point to the 3 Cs initiatives is potentially one thing you could do, for example, is there already is a 3 Cs fund. They can invest the money in the 3 Cs fund. The 3 Cs fund can invest it in Ukraine, and then the profits of that could then be returned to the Ukrainian people as restitution funds. So I'd be all for that. I would add too, I think, if countries did want to push the envelope a little bit, something they could invest in, and it's a little edgier, but I think it would work, is air defense, right? So you could have both countries individually, and possibly even NATO, you could have an idea of an integrated missile air defense umbrella that could work with or possibly even integrate into Ukraine. You could argue, hey, this is a self-defense thing, so it's not aggressive towards Russia. I seriously think the Russians would risk that system becoming operational as an act of war against NATO. I think they're already deterred from doing that. That might even extend to things like an integrated air policing system, which might include Ukrainian aircraft operating beside other nations and NATO aircraft. That's a little edgier than doing nothing, but that would actually be a pretty substantial capability, because again, that kind of structural cap creates space to move people back in, gives them confidence to start rebuilding, gets companies to start investing, and that puts more pressure on the Russians to just move on, that they've failed. So.
Thank you. Mr. ÖZTÜRK, I think you are prepared to intervene.
I have to, because
okay, if you have to, you have
I was challenged
Yeah.
to react.
All right.
And I will do so in a very kind and friendly manner. First of all, there is no rules-based international order. It's over. It's history. Now there is an international disorder. And it's not happening also in Ukraine, because these multiple standards, these really historic mistakes made elsewhere also decrease the credibility of those nations who defend the so-called rules-based international order. What I am talking about, just a few days ago, one country which is the advocate of so-called rules-based international order vetoed a ceasefire motion at the UN Security Council. It's important because I assure you, the rest of the world, which are not, really intense, 154 countries voted for a ceasefire. It's important for Ukraine also to be consistent here. When there is a fighting, when civilians are being killed, when the number of civilians killed in 2 months are more than the total number of civilians killed in Ukraine in 2 years. And when there is a veto at the UN Security Council, you cannot talk about a so-called rules-based international order. It's over. Thank God we are smart country, smart people. Throughout history, we have learned so many lessons. We also had wars with Russia. Once every century, recently, we have also learned our lessons as being a NATO member country. That's why I told, and others also supported, that even in the case of NATO, being a NATO member does not give you full security guarantees. You have to be able to defend yourself. What NATO is going to do is collective defense. Then the allies can come and support your defense. But you are expected to defend your own country, first and foremost. But it requires also permanent and continuous support to each other. It's not happening. We will never lose half of our country, thank God, because we are powerful and also smart. Because we are not going to go to a war with Russia. So simple. We will not lose half of our country. We will not be provoked or creating a strategic dilemma for Russia elsewhere. And I don't recommend this to anybody else. Because it's a serious thing, the war. Ukrainians suffer. She's so right. They are dying. Now the recommendations they are getting after 2 years is keep going, don't lose hope, we will support you. But we are not sure whether we will be able to support you for the coming 2, 3, 4 years. Elections are coming in 24, so don't count on us too much. Try to acquire a nuclear weapon if you can. If that is a security guarantee, I don't know. But therefore, I recommend realism, pragmatism, but also sincerity. Talking about Eurasia, Middle Corridor, you have not mentioned Turkey. You will never achieve a connectivity with Caucasia, Central Asia without Turkey. You will never achieve anything in the Black Sea region without involving us in Ukraine. So my recommendation stays the same. We should, as the closest family of nations, this region, this town, this village, will have to be working together with each other, and we will prevail together.
Well, thank you very much, Director. Listening to you, I was almost beginning to dream on carving out this region and sending it somewhere, I don't know, to Mars or the moon. Then we would be happy and live happily hereafter. Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, we need to carve ourselves out of this discussion because the time is up. I told you at the beginning we'd need 1 day long slot for talking about the topic. One thing I'd just like to mention here, on the top, which is related to the topic, and to some remarks that were made by our distinguished panelists. I think it was yesterday that the Prime Minister of Ukraine mentioned the priorities of the Ukrainian government for the action in the next period of time. And I think I'm not mistaken if I remember that the second priority was the defense industry. So this wraps up or somehow responds to more or less each and every concern you have expressed before. Having said that, I will just add one or two other things. One is that we talked about security without being very careful with defining security. What security? Cyber security? Anybody mention that? How we act together in order to secure cyber security? Energy security? Food security? It was mentioned here and there, which means that security, concept of security itself has mutated, has changed. You may have N plus X howitzers, and you are still unsecure because a guy in a garage pushes a button and all the communications with those howitzers goes down. And you do what? So, if this is true, it means that we need also to think differently than we used to think before. When I wrap it up, Secretary General Stoltenberg said a new reality. Well, we are facing a new reality, but we are the same old people. I'm not talking about age. We are the same, which means that we need to think differently. And I guess we heard here several ideas that allude to this rethinking, renewing our way of thinking. In order to do that, I suggest we take a break. And because after the break, we'll have another panel where high-ranking officers of Romania's military forces, you know, those people don't play with words, nor with guns. They shall address Romania's response to the security challenges in the Black Sea under these very complex circumstances. Madam, gentlemen, Sir James, thank you very much for your patience, for your wisdom, and for your being so committed to respecting the 8-minute-long rule, which I didn't. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you also. Have a nice day. Mr. Altmaier.